everyone, I'm Aria and welcome back to my channel. So today we will be talking about terrain tools and how you can create similar designs to these with your own builds. So I have timestamped this video for you so you can jump ahead to whichever section interests you the most. So I play on PC. I've never played on console before, so all of these hotkeys and commands that you see will be on PC. So to begin with, we'll quickly go over the basic tools we have available to us. So under the terrain tools category, we have the paint tool, the erase tool, which will erase your terrain paint, and the terrain manipulation tool. So under this category, we have this section here, which will determine the size and shape of the terrain you are manipulating. So we have the circle and square brush. So depending on what shape you want your terrain, you can select either of these, and they come in a range of different sizes depending on the size that you are going for. Next we have this section. So this slider here determines the softness of the brush you are using, and this tool here determines the speed that you are raising or lowering your terrain. So when you start a new game, these sliders are usually in this position. Whenever I am doing any terrain manipulation, I tend to put these sliders in this position. I find that it gives me a lot more control. So I will quickly show you what these do. So if you adjust the softness right to the right hand side, we'll use the small brush, and adjust the speed right to the left like I normally do, then the terrain comes up very softly and I think pretty smoothly. However, if you adjust them in the opposite direction, you will see it comes up very quickly and very harshly. So you can adjust these to whichever suit you. However, I tend to use this setting. But for now, we will just put them back in the middle. So next we will talk about these 6 settings that you have here. So the first one raises the terrain. The second one lowers the terrain, and then this third one softens the terrain, so it smooths it out for you, like so. This next one will flatten the terrain to whichever height you have selected. So if we undo the softness, you can see that this piece that I have raised here has these different white lines, and as you go up and down this elevated section, you can see that the white square in the middle jumps to a different level. So that will be the height that you are flattening with this tool. So for example, if we go to the top, it will flatten to the top. However, if we wanted it, say, halfway down where this thicker line is here, then if you click there, it will flatten to that height. This next tool will flatten to the height that you have set in this panel here. So usually it's about here, which is ground level. However, if you set it right up, then it will just automatically raise it to that height, like so. Whereas this one, if you keep on clicking, it basically just won't stop. And then lastly, this button here will just flatten the entire lot completely. So if you just click it once, it will just flatten the entire lot for you. And obviously if you want to undo that, then you just click undo. What I have also found is that if you say we're raising the terrain up here, if we just do it in one whole click, so just holding the left mouse button down and raising it all the way up, when you click undo, undoes the whole thing. However, if you do it in smaller clicks, when you click undo, it will only undo that click, if that makes sense. So it gives you a lot more control if you do things in smaller separate clicks instead of one long click. So let's create a walkable slope. So you say you have your house here, and we have raised the foundation up to about there. What I would do is take this flatten to height terrain tool, hello B, and and jump up so that the square in the middle is at the same height as the building or the house that you have built, and then just flatten the terrain to the same height like so. Then next I would change these settings, so we have the softness tool right to the right hand side and the speed tool right to the left hand side, and then I would go back into these lines that we talked about earlier and select a couple of heights down and then pull out towards me with this same flatten to height tool like so. So if we hit the G key, which will toggle the grid on and off, you can see that there is grass terrain paint and dirt terrain paint. Now this dirt section here, your Sims won't be able to walk up or down. However, this grass section, they will be able to walk on. So if we flatten this to the height of the building and just pull this out a little bit more, that should be walkable for your sim. So let's play test it. So what we can also do with this is, if you want to define it a little bit, make it look a little bit neater and tidier, I find that turning the grid off at this point is helpful. So then we just take this smooth tool and with small clicks, just click on the pieces of the terrain that you want to soften slightly, and then if you find that it's softened it too much, then you can just click undo and it will just undo that one click, instead of, say, if you soften this whole thing and then it's too steep and then you undo it, undoes, you know, the whole click instead of just one small click. So that shouldn't be an issue. We turn the grid back on and you can see there's no lines in this section like there is here, which means that it is walkable. And then you can decorate this as you like. So what I would normally do is go back to this flatten to height tool, turn the grid back on so you can see if these squares come up, if the grid comes up, that means that it's the same height as the square next to it and basically is completely flat. So what I would do is use the square brush, but let's lower it back down to the floor, which I think is about there. Yeah. And then I would move this closer. I would start over to the far side and then slowly move closer to where you have raised your terrain, just to bring it back down. You can use the soften tool to do that as well, however it brings this section up, which is why I prefer to use this one. So then all I would do is just slowly move closer to the building, just to give the raised section that I have just done more definition and more of like a straight line. So say you want it to come straight down and you don't want any of this, then I would use this tool just to define that shape a little bit. Next, say you want to create like a basement driveway. I have done this in the past by either lowering this down, so say you have this, say this is your garage, and then you lower this down into the ground like this to whichever height that you want the foundation of your build to go. So if we jump up to the second level and draw this across here, if you want to have like a foundation piece here with steps up to the house, then it's easy enough just to create like a little porch area and then we can raise the terrain up. So if we click on the raise tool and go over the house, it will raise it up to the height of the porch area that you have here, and it won't raise it up any more than that. So then you can either create your slope or you can just add some stairs in. Because it's technically on a second level, you have to add stairs in, but it gives you the illusion that it is on ground level. So with this garage section here, if you want to create a walkable driveway down to this section, if we jump back down to that level and go back into our terrain tools, we do the same thing with this flatten to height terrain tool. Jump down to the garage height and then pull it out until we have a couple of squares that are the same height as the room that we've just created. And then doing the same thing like we did with the slope, we use these grid lines as a guide. So we jump up a couple of lines with the softness and the speed set right to the minimum that they will go, and then pull towards the road, and that will give you a starting point for a slope. We can then jump in with the smooth tool and just smooth it out as to how we like it. So with this, I would pull sideways 2, depending on how harsh what you have previously done is. And there we have a small slope that leads down to a garage, or maybe you want a walkout basement. This will work the same way. Let's just tidy this up a little bit. And then lastly, we can playtest it. And again, she has no problem walking down there. So all of these techniques can be used to create multiple different styles of houses, but say you want to create a multi-leveled house similar to how we have just done that basement, we would create something like this, and instead of lowering this section down, we will just raise the terrain up to meet this section here. So you can either use this one or this one, doesn't matter, but we'll just add these, change these to here, and then jump up to this section. And we will just raise the terrain up to meet the height of the building that we have. So as you can see here, it has raised it underneath to this height, but further out than the build, it raises it up a little bit more. And then in this situation, we can just use this flatten tool to smooth it out. And then depending on where your front is, you can then just smooth this out into a slope. So now let's talk about things you may want to do with the landscaping. So what I have done in the past is I have created things like ponds and waterfalls with bridges. So what I do with these is I tend to use this custom pool tool, whereas with this one you can just draw like a full square. With this one you can basically just do whatever you like. You can use the fountain tool in the same way, however I like to use the pool tool because I find that if I use, say, debug waterfalls, that I can place them in the bottom of the pool and then I can adjust the height from there, whereas if I use the fountain, then I've only got like a small section and it's it tends to be too high. So I like to use these, and then you have the additional bonus of adding debug fishing posts to them, so your sims can fish in them and they can also swim in them too. So let's start by creating a small pond. So I tend to just kind of click in small directions, and I find that this makes it look a little bit more natural. Like so. And then if you say you want to change sections, then you can just add bits on, or say you want to delete something, you just hold down the control key. This is what it looks like if you use the fountain tool, and this is what it would look like if you were to use the pool tool. As you can see, it's a lot deeper, and I feel that this gives you a better, more natural look, but it's up to you and what your build and design is. So let's talk water types next. So under the pool section, you have this category here, which is water styles. Now this one is the base game one. These two come with Jungle Adventure, and these 4 come with Get Together. This one is also base game, but I don't think I've ever used it because it just hasn't ever fitted a style that I like. This one I quite like because I think it looks really natural. This one has like petals floating in it, which I think is really pretty, but not something that I would ever use. And then these 4 are the ones that I use the most. So they give you a different look depending on if you're going for like a natural pool, like a pond, or if you're maybe going for like a swamp or something. I also like to change this trim. Usually I would just use the base game one, however I have also used this one with Get Together because to me it looks more like a riverbed. I don't know whether it really does, but over the brown base game one it's kind of the same. This one just gives it more of like a rocky effect on the outside, especially when you combine it with, say, this one. I also like to change the floor and the wall paint over these pools. So if we go into the miscellaneous section and select the clean room floor, wall type, sorry, then it comes in different colors, but I find that the first one works best. Hold down shift and you can paint all of the walls at the same time, and the same with the floor. Miscellaneous, bottom of the basement, comes in the same swatches, but I find the first one works the best. And then, depending on what you want the floor to look like, with this one you can't see the bottom, and then these ones just gives it more of a solid look, whereas if you have the pool tile that it comes with, you can see the bottom and you can see the outline, and it just doesn't have the same sort of effect. So the next step for me would be to choose which waterfall I want to use. Now if you have the base game, I've found that the fountain decorations work the best, and you can use any of these, whichever fit your particular style. But you will need move objects on, and if you hold down shift and alt at the same time, you can place multiple and you're not confined to the grid, and that tends to work best if you only have base game. So the waterfalls that I like to use are from Island Living and Discover University. So to get the debug menu up, you hold down Control Shift C and open up the cheat box again and type in bb.show-hidden-objects, press enter, and bb.show-live-edit-objects. and enter. So then when you go over to this search box and you type in debug, or I tend to just put in 2 stars and go to Island Living and Discover University, go right down to where the debug items are. And this one here, it doesn't really look like much, but this is the Island Living waterfall. I used to use this one quite a lot, however I don't use it so much now because the footprint is so big. You can size it down, however it tends to just mess with things. So I now mostly use the Discover University ones, which are, I mean, I can find them here. So this one I have used a couple times. It has a very small footprint, so you're able to put it into the bottom of a pool, and the same with this one. So as you can see, it only has a 4 square footprint, so you can put it down into the bottom of a pool. So let's put that there and change our pool size to something a little bit easier to see. So say we start out with this size, then we can just jump our waterfall right down into the bottom, about there. And then if you hold down Alt, then you can just move it so that it's in the exact space you want it and not confined to the grid. And then we can add on bits, so like this for example, and then holding down Control we can take out this section, and then we can just add on whatever, take off whatever until it is in the shape that we want it, and then just keep going until it kind of looks like a pool. I usually use the tool mod to change the angle of this, but you don't have to. You can just, if you hold down Alt to the Alt key to keep it in the place that you have put it, if you have used the Alt key to place it, and then press the 9 key or the 0 key, you can raise and lower it depending on where you want it, but for now we'll just keep it there. Then I would go back into the debug menu and find some rocks. So the ones I like to use the most are from Snowy Escape. However, there's so many for you to choose from that it doesn't matter what pack you have, what packs you don't have. See, there's plenty of base game rocks for you to use too, and they're all in a pretty good size. And you can use the square bracket keys to resize them, and then you can change the direction of them, and holding down Alt you can change the direction not according to the grid. So for now let's use these ones, and then you can just basically put them wherever you want them to make it to cover up the corners. And then you can just add in wherever you feel like you need to. And as you can see, that pretty much covers up all of the harsh lines that we had from before and gives it a more kind of natural look. You can also go down into the bottom of the pool, and if you zoom in far enough it will just, the waterfall will disappear. And then I like to add these like floor boulders, I suppose, into the bottom just to make it look a little bit more natural. I always use debug plants, and most of them are right at the top when you type in debug. So these ones are all free, which is great. It's a lot better than having to spend, 200 simoleons on a bush when you might be short of money but want a really nice, landscaped lot without using money cheats. So I find they have a lot nicer texture. So what I tend to use is this one. Let's change the season because that's better. So we can see everything's a lot more green. So let's go back into debug. And yeah, I just like to use basically whichever ones of these kind of take my fancy at the time. So I will use these ones. I like to use these. And then if they are too big for you or too small, then you just use the bracket keys to change the size. I found that to make it look more realistic, not all plants are the same size, so you can change the size of these plants to make them look a little bit more realistic to what you are going for. I also like to use lots of bright colors to just make it stand out a little bit more. I also like these rocks. So you can use any rocks you like, but these ones, I just like the shape of them, and the rocks in the normal menu are so expensive that it's just not worth it. So these ones I tend to find give a more scattered, realistic look. You can also use these little grass items. I tend to size them down a couple times and put them on the edge just to break up any harsh borders that you may have. And that is generally all I do. I occasionally will cover all of this border, but most of the time I will just leave it and then go on to terrain paint. So with the terrain paint, I find that if you adjust the softness right down, it's a lot easier to control where things go, and it's a lot more natural too. So we go on to dirt and sand. This one, the muddy mud, I tend to put right near the edge. So we select the second small circle, and then you can either hold it down or do small clicks. If you hold it down and then want to undo, it will undo the whole section. However, if you do small clicks or just intermittent clicks, then it will only delete that one click. So it's a lot easier for you to control where the paint goes and ultimately what your landscaping looks like. So let's do the whole border. And then I will go in with a larger brush with a lighter colored paint and just do small clicks and pull it out towards you or towards the grass, and it just blends it in a little bit more than if you were to, say, have it all the way up the end and then hold down and do it like this. Like so. And then I tend to use 2 or 3 different paints to give it more of a natural look, since if you go to a pond or a lake, you don't tend to find that there's just mud or just grass. It tends to be a combination. So I like to use this scratchy in patches tool paint, terrain paint, and go over the top of it, and again just drag it out from where the edge is, and it just kind of blends it in a little bit more. And then finally I will go in with usually this one because it's the lightest of all of the options, and then do the same but pull it out even more. But say you don't like any of it or you want to change a section, then obviously you can just click on the erase tool and erase the sections that you don't like. I do find that even at the softer setting it is still a little bit too harsh for me, As you can see, it just deletes everything. But it is definitely handy if you don't like what you've done. It does take a fair bit of practice, I found, at least for me. So if you don't get it right the first time, then please don't give up. Please keep trying, because it's definitely something that's taken me quite a long time to get the hang of and feel relatively confident with. But I hope you have enjoyed today's video. I definitely don't know it all. This is just what I have picked up myself and through other people's tutorials. So if there is anything that I haven't mentioned that you have found yourself or you have seen somebody else do, then please comment it down below so that other people can share that tip and we can all learn together, because that is the ultimate goal for all of us, is to share our knowledge. So that being said, remember to save your game as often as you can. The last thing you want is for you to lose all of your work. And lastly, to playtest, because everybody wants a usable, workable game. So if you can playtest your creations, then that is amazing. So yeah, I hope you have enjoyed. Please let me know what you think. Let me know if there's anything I missed, and hopefully I will see you all next time. Bye everyone.